Hi, my name is Nick Broughton and I'm a Randomfish. Hit that subscribe button and let's all be random fishes together, shall we? So it is my it will not be my final review of 2019, but it is getting fairly close to that. Now, I did say last time that I was going to review some Christmas stuff that I truly do enjoy watching and listening to at this time of year. Now, obviously, the last review I did was not that. It was of the Infinity Trinity by Walter Benesiak. Obviously, I do still encourage you to go watch that. But right now, I wanted to focus on the Christmassy stuff because, obviously, it's a few days till Christmas, and frankly, Christmas! Yay! Mentality. It has appeared. Now, I wanted to talk about 3 interesting things that I've always done at this time of year, or watched or listened to at this time of year. The first one being one I have the DVD of, and I also have the case for right here. Father Christmas. Raymond Briggs is Father Christmas. Yeah, I've got the 25-year anniversary DVD because my old copy was dying, so I needed to get a new one. But Father Christmas. I'm hoping you already know the story, but in case you don't, Father Christmas comes back from doing his rounds on Christmas Eve like usual, and he then goes all fourth wall breaking and starts talking to the camera. His first line to the audience literally is, "Oh, I know what you're thinking, don't know why he's blooming or moaning about." And he proceeds to tell a story all about how over the course of a few months over the year that he decided to go travelling, where he painted up his sleigh and turned it into a caravan of sorts, and he flew with his reindeer to various places. Which, I have to admit, is brilliant when you're a kid. When you're an adult, all I could do when watching that is sitting there going, how does no one see you? Like, it's so blatant, how does nobody see you? And it's brilliantly fun to watch. It's pretty fun to watch my brain kind of do this little backflip cartwheel on itself, which is brilliant. He visits 3 places while he's there. The first one being France, then he goes to Scotland, and then he goes to the United States, or more specifically, Las Vegas. In France, he tries to look a bit more French, and then he looks just more like a tourist than anything else, which I think is hilarious as a concept. He eats a lot of food, a bit too much like food that doesn't quite agree with him, so he spends most of the trip running back and forth to bushes to the point where he has to actually go to a camping ground and keep the reindeer out of sight so he can run back and forth and do his thing. When he goes to Scotland, he ends up getting a kilt. He goes to a pub, he gets drunk quite a few times, he has fun and everything else. And then he goes to Las Vegas, where he spends the rest of the trip gambling, singing, eating excessively, lounging about in a pool, getting a tan, all the usual stuff that you would kind of expect you to do yourself to do in Las Vegas. So here's where it gets fun. The interesting part about this stuff is more or less stuff like whenever one kid, it's not even a bunch of kids, just one kid, who turns to their mum and says, "Mum, is that Santa Claus?" And his exact response is, "I gotta get out of here. I gotta move." It's not because I think it's brilliant the fact that they do it like that, because that is a way that Santa is meant to be a secret. He is not this worldwide known phenomenon. You know, I do like that, and I like the fact that it's kept in public. He's still out in public, but the second someone recognizes for who he truly is, he moves. He gets the hell out of Dodge. One of my favourite things about Scotland actually is that he gets there and it's all nice and raining, and he's camping out in the middle of nowhere, and he's not actually on any camping grounds or anything like that. And he wakes up one morning and it's all nice and sunny and lovely, and he's by this lake, might be linked to the ocean, I'm not quite sure at this point. I'd say ocean, close-ish. And he runs down in his trunks basically and goes in for a quick dip. And what happens? It's freezing cold to the point where I felt pain as he leapt in. Like, the way it's done in such a way is that if you know anything about Scotland and about its waters, even if it's sunny, it just feels so moment. It doesn't feel right at all. Las Vegas is a lot of fun, obviously. He spends most of his time making silly remarks and doing funny things and everything else and all that sort of thing. And it is very much that kind of film. But we do get... One of the best things about this is that when he actually gets back around to doing Christmas and whatnot at the end of the year, he ends up... There's a song that gets played while he's going off around the world on the sleigh, with the line of, "It's another blooming Christmas." That's the title of the song. It's another blooming Christmas. The best things I can describe about this are three things. Number one, it is that song. Number two, it is the trips and the traveling that he does over the course of those months. Funny as anything. And then my personal favourite, which is quite frankly this, which I think is a genius thing, possibly the best thing that Briggs ever did with his designs. Where does Santa Claus live? For everyone here, you're thinking, it's the North Pole, Nick. What's wrong with you, you idiot? To which I say, no. In this version, he lives in a semi-detached house in a public neighbourhood in what appears to be a rural town somewhere. I don't think it's quite a big city. It's literally, when he comes in on his sled and with the reindeer, he pulls up down a street that is littered with houses. When the post gets brought to him, it is literally a postman delivering letters to him, and everyone else in the street should be able to see what's going on. They just don't. And I think that ties in brilliantly to one of the best things ever, which is you just ignore what you don't understand. Which obviously doesn't exist in today's society, but when I was a kid, when I was growing up, when I would watch this over and over again, that worked to me. It's like the TARDIS from Doctor Who. You kind of see it, but you also ignore it. You know, it's not something that you register in your head. It's weird. But Raymond Briggs didn't just make Father Christmas. He also made another lovely film called The Snowman. Now, before anyone says anything, I understand that there is a sequel called The Snowman and the Snow Dog. No, I am not talking about that one for the very simple reason that the ending and the way the Snowman is kind of done, I feel like the sequel doesn't quite spit in the face of it per se, but it just isn't what I would personally want from a sequel. If you enjoy it, that's fine, but it's not something that I feel connects to my childhood, to what I enjoyed about it and everything else. The Snowman is, for lack of a better term, it is a marvel of animation and brilliant storytelling. The whole thing is silent. No character speaks whatsoever. There's classical music done to the whole thing. A kid makes a snowman. Magic happens. The snowman comes to life. He then goes inside the house and he and the boy goof around, have some fun together. He goes and hides out in the fridge and puts peas on his head. He goes into his parents' room and tries on makeup and dresses for some reason. He goes outside and gets on a motorbike and rides that around for a little bit, which is fun as anything. And then, of course, the all-important massive scene of I'm walking in the air, where he takes the boy by the hand and flies. And they fly up north. I don't think it's quite the North Pole, but it's close. They fly off and they end up meeting with a whole bunch of snowmen, and they all dance together. They have a little party, and he meets Santa Claus, which, by the way, is also shown in Father Christmas, because even though this one has Santa actually talking, he still turns up at the snowman party, and there is still that meeting with that same boy, so it is the same Santa. Ha! I love continuity. I love continuity in things, I really do. But when they get home afterwards, the boy's had a lovely time, he says goodbye to the snowman, he goes back upstairs, he goes to sleep, he then wakes up the next morning, and the snowman is melted. And it's gone. And he sits there holding the scarf and looks sad, and the credits start rolling. Now, The question becomes, how do I prefer that to the happy ending of Snowman and the Snow Dog? Well, because the Snowman ending actually does a lot more in connection to Christmas than you might think. We think about Christmas as it's a time of year. From the beginning of December all the way through to the end of December, Christmas is that time of year. And everyone goes nuts for it. Everyone tries to make it last as long as they can. You know, it's even gone into the point where the second Halloween decorations go down in the month of November. All of a sudden everything Christmassy starts turning up. Heck, Christmas stuff has even turned up in supermarkets after summer has occurred. You know, it's that kind of ridiculousness. But here's where it gets interesting for me. Christmas is a single day. It is one day in December. That is Christmas Day. Everything afterwards, Boxing Day or Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve maybe, or just the beginning of December, that is not the day of Christmas. And it's not the day that, you know, that is shown in the Gregorian calendar. And the day will be, you know, the day will come and then it will be over. And then we will move on to the next thing. That's how this whole thing works. But the big thing that I find interesting about the Snowman in relation to Christmas is this. The day is done, yes, but the memories are still with us, and we still maintain those memories, we still keep them in our heads, and we still hold them and cherish them for as long as we can. And it's the same thing for this boy. He is holding the scarf not as a sadness thing of seeing his friend melted, you know, gone before him in the snow, but the fact is that he's holding that scarf to remind him of the precious time that he's had with the Snowman. The fact that it has been such a magical evening, that all of this stuff has occurred. It's a brief period of time that is then hit by this horrible moment, but the memories are still with us. And that's why I feel the Snowman is not only a masterpiece of silent filmmaking, or silent animation making, as it were, but also something that I truly do believe keeps me in the Christmas spirit. It is that thing. It is that moment. But, hey, everyone's allowed to have their own opinion. If you like Snowman and the Snow Dog, fantastic. Go right ahead. Keep on liking it. That's fine. But, as someone who grew up with this kind of mentality, that's where it all comes from for me. I still enjoy the Christmas spirit over the other days of December. I just know that there's just the one day that's called Christmas Day. But I keep the memories alive, and I 100% still love them every single time I think about them. It's great for me. But, anyway, I'm getting a bit too thoughtful and a bit too internal with my thought process. So let's think about this. Let's move on. So, I said I had 3 things to talk about. Well, I've done the 2 big Raymond Briggs things. But what else is there? Well, there are many traditions that I had around Christmas. One of them, rather bizarrely, being going in to watch those 2, Father Christmas and the Snowman, on the TV at about 5 in the morning on Christmas Day. Now, I couldn't wake my parents on Christmas Day, so who did I wake? Yeah, I would run into my brother's room and I would jump on his bed and make him watch it with me. As a kid, enjoy those moments, because when you reach a certain age, any age in sort of your teenage years, maybe in your late teenage years, if you're not that big of a thing on these things, you begin to understand just how hungover everyone will be on Christmas morning, especially if they've gone out on Christmas Eve, because they will have done. And as such, you will be kind of, what's the phrase, very unhappy if you get woken up by a younger sibling jumping all over you. It's interesting. But anyway, what's my other tradition? Have you ever heard of a little thing called Save Our Santa? 3 words. Save Our Santa. What's it about? Well, it's the most most realistic moment, yet coupled with the most insane moments that you could possibly think of anything to do with Christmas. Because you have Santa, a little boy who helps him, along with all the elves and the fairies and the reindeer and everything else on one side. And then on the other side, you've got the Queen, Parliament, and tax collectors. Oh yes, this is where it gets fun. In Save Our Santa, Santa gets put in prison by taxmen. Yes. They go to the North Pole and they say to him, you owe us VAT. We take 15% of your earnings right now. Back, taking 15% of your earnings. Santa goes, I don't get paid for this. Like, I have no money for this at all. I get paid in love by these children. Bear in mind that when this was made, there were brilliant explanations for everything about how Santa made his toys. All the stuff that he got given to him, all the stuff that he needed for toys, the hay for the reindeer, the food that he ate, they got brought in by fairies for free, and things just found their way into his possession. I think that's the most ingenious explanation for Santa's abilities that I've ever heard in my life. Yes! Keep stuff like that. I love it. But the taxmen, of course, go, right, you get paid in love? We can't take 15% of that. You are guilty of tax evasion. We're going to throw you in prison. They throw Santa in prison. What the fuck? What? That's insanity. But the little boy that was helping him, Rupert, his name is, he ends up flying off with the reindeer before the taxmen can put him into foster care. And he flies off with the reindeer and he goes, right, I'm going to get Santa out of jail. So what does he do? He goes around to all the children that he can find, all the children across the world that he can get, and they all march into London and they petition the Queen to get Santa out of prison. Right? Best line ever is to hear this guy who's telling the story to doing an impression of the Queen. What? Santa in prison? That's exactly the voice, and it's brilliant. And the Queen wants her presents for Christmas as well, so she's, it's like, if I don't get the presents from Santa, I'm going to be very miffed about this, what's going on. And they try and get the Prime Minister to get Parliament to sort of get Santa out to pass a bill, basically. To pass a bill, that's the American term, what's wrong with me? Basically to pass a law that Santa should be let out of prison, that he's not, that he should never be thrown in prison again. And they all sit there and go, yeah, but the law's the law. He should be paying tax. Why is this such a, we don't want Santa in prison, but the law is the law mentality. Which I have to say is one of the most frustrating things about Parliament in any situation. We then get the two taxmen, who are called Greedy and Grab, I'd like to point out. If there are villain names, that is them, right then and there. But they realise all of a sudden that they've kind of screwed up. Because Santa's only there for 1 month in the year, he can't pay tax or anything like that. And so they've gone and thrown him in jail, and they've screwed up massively. So they try and avoid this problem. They figured out the problem, but they're going to try and avoid it because they don't want to get into trouble about it. And then someone from Parliament discovers the whole thing, goes off to Parliament, tells everyone what's happening, and blah, 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 and Santa gets released. And then another brilliant line in the whole thing. It goes, something along the lines of going, Greedy and Grab were caught in an hour and had their breakfast in the tower, and spent their Christmas in the tower. And as befitting such miserable sinners, had bread and milk for their Christmas dinners. Yes! Love the idea. It's genius to me. I love saying that phrase. It's genius to me. I don't know why. But the idea is that, Santa obviously gets freed, the Queen gets her wellies and everything else. And it's just a nice little story. It's complete poppycock. Has absolutely no chance whatsoever of it being any kind of realism at all. But it seems like the kind of thing that certain adults in this country would still do, even to this day. I mean, I'm speaking more as an adult than I think I ever did as a kid. When I was a kid, I loved the songs. That was it. And I thought the Queen imitation was hilarious. As an adult, I can look at this now and think to myself, there are people in this country in 2019 who would still do this. Who actually would, at some point, if they found Santa Claus, if they were proven that Santa Claus existed, they would sit there and say, how have you not paid tax? How have you not, you know, contributed to law? I know that there's this whole, you know, hubbub about big companies not paying tax and everything else. But I mean, I'll be honest, if someone was smart enough to have discovered if Santa was real and actually found him in this country, they wouldn't see him as a giant company. They just sit there and say, why haven't you paid tax to us? We deserve your money. Kind of a voice like that, I would have thought. But that's what that is. And I mean, it's a fun thing. It's filled with songs, everything else. If you look it up at some point in the future, look up Save Our Santa. You hopefully could find it on CD. I listened to it for years on tape. On cassette tape. Yeah. For those of you who don't know what a cassette tape is, get away from this channel. I mean, I'm just saying. Although, I'll be honest, I probably shouldn't overly know what a cassette tape is either. But hey, I was a kid in the 90s and a lot of stuff that I enjoyed was on tape. So, stuff you. But that's the way it is. Those are some of my Christmas classics, guys. So, I mean, I beg you, be you happy for Christmas this year, be you not so happy for Christmas this year, remember the wonderful things that these kind of stories and these kind of specials will teach us. The fact that Christmas is only fleeting, but you have to keep the memories of everything that's beautiful about the world alive. The fact that sometimes, you know, you have to allow the world to embrace you in every possible way, and just have a blooming good Christmas. I will see you soon, hopefully, my young friends, but until then, Randomfish out.